Oklahoma Territory, 1888. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, changing everything Abigail Sterling thought she knew about her future. She stood on the porch of the boarding house in St. Louis, staring at the words that made no sense. Her Uncle Samuel, a man she barely remembered from childhood, had died. And somehow, impossibly, he had left her a ranch. 200 acres in Oklahoma Territory, the letter said. Property, livestock, and a home. Abigail was 28 years old, a seamstress who lived in a cramped room above Mrs. Henderson's shop. She had $37 to her name, and a dress she had been mending for 3 weeks because the customer could not pay. The idea that she owned land seemed like a dream, or possibly a cruel joke. But the deed was real. Her name, written in careful script. Abigail Rose Sterling, owner of the Diamond S Ranch, Creek County, Oklahoma Territory. She left St. Louis 3 days later with everything she owned in 2 carpet bags. The train carried her west through Missouri, into Kansas, and finally south into Oklahoma Territory. The landscape changed outside her window, buildings giving way to prairie, the world opening up in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. When the stagecoach finally stopped at the town of Bristow, Abigail stepped down into October wind that smelled of dry grass and distant rain. The driver handed down her bags, tipped his hat, and left her standing in the dust. The town was small, a single street lined with wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon, a church at the far end. Men on horses watched her with open curiosity. A woman sweeping the porch of the hotel paused, eyes narrowing. Abigail smoothed her burgundy dress, adjusted the braid of auburn hair that had come loose during the journey, and walked toward the general store. She needed supplies. She needed directions. She needed to understand what her uncle had left her. The store owner, a man named Mr. Garrett, looked up when she entered. His expression shifted from welcome to something harder when she introduced herself. "You are Samuel Sterling's niece?" he asked slowly. "Yes. I have come to claim the ranch." Garrett exchanged a glance with another man near the counter. "Miss Sterling, I do not know if anyone told you, but your uncle has been gone near 3 months now. The ranch has been sitting empty. I understand. That is why I am here. It is not an easy place for a woman alone," Garrett said carefully. "Especially now. There have been troubles. Claim jumpers working the area. Men looking to take what is not theirs." Abigail lifted her chin. "The land is mine by law. I have the deed. Law and reality are different things out here, miss." She purchased basic supplies, using money she could not afford to spend. Flour, coffee, dried beans, lamp oil. Garrett gave her directions to the ranch, his tone suggesting he thought she would not last a week. The wagon she hired rattled along a rutted path through prairie grass, turning gold with autumn. The driver, an older man named Jacob, spoke little but watched the horizon constantly, his rifle close at hand. "You really planning to stay out there alone?" he finally asked. "I do not have much choice. Might want to reconsider. That ranch has drawn attention. Wrong kind." "What kind of attention?" "The kind that thinks empty land is free land." The ranch appeared as the sun began its descent. A house of weathered wood, a barn that leaned slightly, fences in need of repair. But It was there. Real. Hers. Jacob helped her carry supplies inside. His movements quick and nervous. "You got a gun?" "No." He shook his head. "You need one. I will tell Mr. Garrett. He will send something out." "I cannot afford." "Consider it a loan. Out here, staying alive matters more than pride." He left as the sun touched the horizon, his wagon disappearing down the path in a cloud of dust. Abigail stood alone on the porch of her ranch house and felt the weight of what she had done settle over her. She had left everything familiar for this empty place, this uncertain future. Her savings would last perhaps 2 months if she was very careful. She knew nothing about ranching, about surviving on the frontier, about defending property from men who wanted to take it. But she also knew she had nothing to go back to. St. Louis held only small rooms, long hours over a needle, and the slow death of dreams deferred. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance. Inside, the house smelled of dust and absence. One main room with a fireplace, a small bedroom, a kitchen area with a rusted stove. Her uncle's belongings remained, as if he had simply stepped out and would return any moment. His coat on a hook, his boots by the door. Abigail lit a lamp and began to unpack. She had hours before true darkness, and there was work to do. Tomorrow she would assess what needed repair, what livestock remained, how to make this place habitable. Tonight, she would simply try to believe she could survive here. The knock came as she was heating water for coffee. Abigail froze. It was nearly full dark. No one should be out here. The knock came again, harder. She moved to the door, her heart hammering. "Who is there?" "Name is Elijah Chambers, ma'am. I worked for your uncle." Abigail opened the door a crack, keeping her body behind the frame. The man on her porch was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark brown hair that touched his collar beneath a cowboy hat. His face was weathered, strong-featured, his blue eyes steady and assessing. He wore a tan leather vest over a work shirt, dust on his clothes suggesting a long ride. "Mr. Chambers, I heard in town that Samuel's niece had arrived. Wanted to check that you made it here safely." "I am fine, thank you." He glanced past her into the dim house. "With respect, ma'am, you are not fine. You are alone on an isolated ranch with no protection, and men watching who would take this land the moment they think you cannot hold it. I will manage. Samuel was my friend. I worked his land for 2 years, helped him build what he had here. I cannot let his niece walk into danger without at least offering help." Abigail studied him. He looked tired, his face lined with something deeper than simple exhaustion. There was a hardness around his eyes, a wariness in his stance. This was a man who had seen trouble. "What kind of help?" "The practical kind. Repairs, securing the property, making sure no one mistakes your arrival for weakness. I know ranching. I know this territory. And I owe your uncle a debt. I cannot pay you. Did not ask for payment. Why would you help me?" His jaw tightened. "Because Samuel gave me work when no one else would. Because he trusted me with his land. And because out here, you leave women to fend for themselves, you are no kind of man at all." Something in his voice made Abigail open the door wider. Whatever this man's past, he believed what he was saying. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Chambers, but I need to think about it." He nodded. Fair enough. I will be back tomorrow morning, early. If you decide you want the help, I will be here. If not, I will respect that and leave you be." He tipped his hat and walked to his horse, a dark stallion that waited patiently near the barn. Abigail watched him ride away into the gathering darkness, then closed the door and locked it with a bar that had seen better days. She slept poorly that night, every sound making her start awake. The house creaked and settled. Wind rattled the windows. Once, she heard horses in the distance and lay frozen, waiting for hoofbeats that never came closer. When dawn broke, pale and cold, Abigail rose and dressed quickly. She heated water, made weak coffee with grounds she stretched too thin, and tried to steady her nerves. Elijah Chambers arrived as the sun cleared the horizon. He rode in openly, announcing himself before he reached the house. Abigail watched from the window as he dismounted and waited, giving her time to decide. She opened the door. "Mr. Chambers." "Ma'am, have you thought about my offer?" Abigail looked past him at the ranch, at the fences that needed mending, and the barn that needed shoring up, and the 100 other tasks she had no idea how to accomplish. Pride told her to refuse. Practicality told her she would fail alone. "I accept your help," she said quietly. "But I need to be clear. This is my ranch. I make the decisions. I will not be pushed aside or managed." Something that might have been respect crossed his face. "Would not expect anything less. And I still cannot pay you. At least not yet. Room and board is payment enough. I have been sleeping rough for weeks." Abigail hesitated, then nodded. "The barn has a loft. It is dusty but dry. That will do fine." He unsaddled his horse and set to work immediately, his movements efficient and practiced. By midday, he had reinforced the barn door, replaced several fence posts, and assessed what livestock remained. 3 cows, a dozen chickens, 2 horses beside his own. Abigail worked alongside him as much as she could, learning by watching. He explained things patiently when she asked, never making her feel foolish for not knowing. By evening, she was exhausted, but had learned more about ranching than she had thought possible. They ate a simple supper at the kitchen table, beans and cornbread she had managed not to burn. Elijah ate without complaint, his manner quiet, but not unfriendly. "You said you worked for my uncle for 2 years, Abigail said. "What was he like?" Elijah set down his fork. "Stubborn, fair, did not ask questions about a man's past, only cared about the work he did. He built this place from nothing, and he was proud of it. Why did he never marry? Have a family? He said once that he had loved a woman back east, but she chose someone else. He came west to forget, and ended up staying." Abigail felt a pang of recognition. Running from heartbreak, building something new. Perhaps she and her uncle had been more alike than she knew. "What brought you out here, Mr. Chambers?" His expression closed. "The war." "And what came after?" She wanted to ask more, but the look on his face stopped her. Whatever he had left behind, it still haunted him. "You can call me Elijah," he said after a moment. "If we are going to work together, no need for formality." "Abigail," she replied. "Or Abby, if you prefer." He nodded, something easing in his posture. "Abby, it is." The days fell into a rhythm. Elijah worked from dawn to dusk, repairing, building, making the ranch functional again. Abigail learned quickly, her hands growing calloused from work she had never imagined doing. She fed chickens, milked cows, mended fences alongside him. At night, they ate together, conversations growing longer. He told her about the land, about the Creek and Cherokee who had lived here before removal, about the Boomers and Sooners who had flooded the territory. She told him about St. Louis, about her years as a seamstress, about the small dreams that had kept her going. They did not speak of the tension that was building between them, the way his hand would linger when he helped her down from the wagon, the way she found herself watching him when he worked. It was too new, too fragile. And they both carried too many scars to rush toward something that might hurt. But it was there, growing like the autumn prairie grass, quiet and undeniable. 2 weeks after Abigail's arrival, the trouble Garrett had warned about materialized. 3 men rode onto the property just after dawn. Abigail was feeding chickens when she heard the hoofbeats. Elijah emerged from the barn, his hand moving instinctively toward the rifle he now kept close. The leader was a man in his 40s, well dressed for the frontier, with cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. He dismounted without invitation, his men staying mounted and watchful. "Good morning," he said pleasantly. "Name is Elias Kincaid. I am here on behalf of the Creek County Land Office regarding this property." Abigail set down the feed bucket and walked toward the house, feeling Elijah move to flank her. "This is my property. I have the deed." "I am sure you do, Miss Sterling. But there seems to be some confusion about the boundaries. Your uncle's claim overlaps with a prior filing. We are here to resolve the matter." "There is no confusion. The deed is clear." Kincaid's smile widened. "Deeds can be challenged, especially when the original owner is deceased and the new owner is, forgive me, inexperienced in these matters. It would be much simpler if you sold the property. I represent buyers who would pay a fair price. The property is not for sale. Miss Sterling, I urge you to reconsider. The territory can be dangerous for a woman alone. Accidents happen. It would be a shame if something unfortunate occurred." Elijah stepped forward. "She is not alone. And if you are threatening her, you should know I spent 6 years with the Union cavalry. I know exactly what kind of accidents men like you arrange." Kincaid's eyes shifted to Elijah, assessing. "Mr. Chambers, is it? I have heard about you. Former officer, dishonorably discharged for disobeying orders. Drifter with no prospects. You think protecting this woman will redeem you?" Elijah's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "I think you should leave. Now. We will leave. But this is not over. Miss Sterling, you have 1 week to reconsider my offer. After that, I cannot guarantee your safety." Kincaid remounted, his men following. They rode away slowly, making it clear they were not afraid. Abigail watched them disappear, her hands shaking. "Who was that?" "Trouble," Elijah said grimly. "The kind that does not stop until it gets what it wants. He said you were discharged dishonorably." Elijah turned away. "He did. Is it true?" Silence stretched between them. Finally, Elijah spoke, his voice rough. "Yes, I disobeyed a direct order during a campaign against the Cheyenne. We were told to burn a village, kill everyone, women, children. I refused. They court-martialed me, stripped my rank, sent me west with nothing. Abigail felt something shift in her chest. You saved innocent people. I failed to follow orders. In the army, that is all that matters. It matters that you chose mercy over cruelty. He looked at her then, his blue eyes filled with something raw and painful. Most people do not see it that way. I do, she said quietly. The week that followed was tense. They reinforced the property, Elijah teaching Abigail to shoot the rifle Jacob had sent from town. She was not a natural, but she learned to steady her aim, to breathe through the fear. At night, they took turns keeping watch. Elijah slept in the main room now, close enough to respond if trouble came. Abigail told herself it was practical, necessary. But she felt safer knowing he was near. The claim jumpers came on the 7th night. Abigail woke to Elijah's hand on her shoulder, his voice low and urgent. Stay quiet. Do not light a lamp. She heard it then. Horses, multiple riders, approaching from different directions. Elijah moved to the window, rifle ready. They are trying to surround the house. If shooting starts, you stay down and let me handle it. This is my ranch. I am not hiding while you defend it alone. He looked at her, something fierce and protective in his gaze. Abby, I can shoot. You taught me. This is not targets. These are men who will kill you. Then I die fighting for what is mine. A shot rang out, shattering the window. Elijah pulled her down, glass raining over them. More shots followed, bullets tearing through the wooden walls. They are trying to scare us out, Elijah said. Do not give them what they want. He returned fire, his shots measured and precise. Abigail crawled to the other window, raised her rifle, and aimed at the shadowy figures circling the house. Her first shot went wide. Her second found a rider's horse, the animal rearing and throwing its rider. Good, Elijah said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Keep them off balance. The attack lasted perhaps 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. The claim jumpers had expected an easy target, a frightened woman who would flee. Instead, they found organized resistance. When one of their men fell wounded, the others retreated, dragging him away. Silence settled over the ranch, broken only by Abigail's ragged breathing. Elijah moved through the house, checking the damage. Several windows broken, bullet holes in the walls, but the structure held. He returned to where Abigail sat, still gripping her rifle. You did well, he said quietly. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely set the rifle down. I shot at people. I tried to hurt them. You defended your home. There is a difference. The shaking became sobs, everything she had held back for weeks breaking free. Elijah knelt beside her, his hand covering hers on the rifle. It is over. You are safe. They will come back. Probably. I cannot do this forever. I cannot live waiting for the next attack. You are not alone anymore. His voice was rough with emotion. I am not leaving. Whatever comes, we face it together. She looked up at him, tears on her cheeks, and saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not just protectiveness, something deeper. Why? She whispered. Why stay? You do not owe me anything. His hand moved to her face, thumb brushing away tears. Because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, This stopped being about your uncle's debt. This became about you. The air between them charged with everything unspoken. Abigail felt the pull of him, the warmth of his hand on her skin, the steady strength that had kept her going when she wanted to give up. Elijah, I know this is not the right time. I know we have bigger problems. But I need you to know, you are not just someone I am helping. You are. He stopped, struggling for words. You are the reason I want to stay. Abigail's heart hammered. She had been alone so long, had taught herself not to want things she could not have. But here was this man, wounded and honorable and impossibly brave, telling her she mattered. I am scared, she admitted. Not just of the claim jumpers, of this, of feeling something again. I know. I am scared too. His honesty broke through her last defenses. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It was tentative, questioning, but when his arms came around her, pulling her close, it became something more. Something that spoke of need and hope, and the fragile beginning of trust. When they parted, both breathless, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. We are going to survive this. The claim jumpers, the threats, all of it. And then, we are going to build something here. If you want that. I want that, Abigail whispered. I want you. They sat together as dawn broke, the ranch damaged but standing, their future uncertain but suddenly full of possibility. The next day, they rode into Bristow together. Abigail wanted to report the attack, to demand protection from the law. Elijah was skeptical, but agreed to try. The sheriff, a man named Wade Callahan, listened to their account with an expression that suggested he had heard it all before. Miss Sterling, I sympathize with your situation. But without proof of who attacked you, there is nothing I can do. We know who sent them. Elias Kincaid. Kincaid is a respected businessman. Unless you have evidence, end quote. He threatened me on my own property. He made you an offer. That is not illegal. Abigail felt frustration rising. So I am supposed to wait until they kill me before you act? Callahan sighed. I am telling you how things work here. If you cannot hold the property, maybe you should consider selling. Elijah stepped forward. She can hold it. And if your office will not help, we will handle it ourselves. Be careful, Chambers. Vigilante justice will land you in jail faster than those claim jumpers. They left the sheriff's office with nothing gained. Abigail wanted to scream at the injustice of it, but Elijah took her hand, steadying her. We knew the law would not help, he said quietly. We have to be smarter than Kincaid. Find another way. What way? I am still figuring that out. They stopped at the general store for supplies. Mr. Garrett greeted them with surprising warmth, his earlier skepticism replaced by something like respect. Heard you fought off raiders last night, he said. Word travels fast. Some folks are starting to think you might actually make it. We intend to, Abigail said firmly. Good. This territory needs people with spine. He lowered his voice. I should not tell you this, but Kincaid has been buying up properties all over the county, pressuring people to sell, using the land office to create disputes. He is building something big, and he does not care who he hurts doing it. Is there anyone who stands up to him? A few tried. They either sold or left. You were the first to fight back. Back at the ranch, they worked side by side, repairing the damage from the attack. The physical labor was a relief, something concrete to focus on while their minds worked through bigger problems. As evening fell, they sat on the porch, watching the sun paint the prairie gold and orange. Abigail felt the exhaustion of the last week settling into her bones, but also something else. A strange sense of belonging. "I never thought I would live somewhere like this," she said quietly. "Growing up, I dreamed of a small house with a garden. A quiet life. This is nothing like that." "Is that bad?" "No. It is terrifying and wonderful and more real than anything I had before." She looked at him. "You make it possible." Elijah took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "You make me want to stop running. I have been moving since the war ended, never staying anywhere long enough to matter. But here, with you, I want to build something permanent. Even with everything that is happening, especially because of it, fighting for something makes it mean more." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness gathered, neither wanting to break the peace of the moment. Whatever tomorrow brought, tonight they had this, each other, and the beginning of something that felt like home. The second attack came 5 days later, but this time they were ready. Elijah had spent the intervening days setting traps around the property, strategic defenses that would slow any approach. When the claim jumpers came in the early morning darkness, they found their horses stumbling over hidden rope lines, their advance announced by clattering tin cans strung on wires. The element of surprise gone, the attackers retreated quickly, unwilling to face prepared resistance. But Abigail knew this was not over. Kincaid would escalate. He had too much invested to simply give up. The answer came from an unexpected source. A woman arrived at the ranch 3 days after the second attack. She was perhaps 60, dressed in practical clothing, her gray hair pulled back severely. She introduced herself as Margaret Donovan, owner of the neighboring property to the east. "I heard about your troubles," she said without preamble. "Kincaid tried the same with me 2 years ago. I fought him off, barely, but I know his methods." "How did you stop him?" Abigail asked. "I found proof of his fraud. He was using a corrupt clerk at the land office to create false disputes, making it look like legitimate claims overlapped. Once I exposed that, he backed off. He could not afford the scrutiny." "Do you still have that proof?" "I do. But more importantly, I know the clerk is still working for him. If we can catch him in the act, we can bring Kincaid down for good." Elijah leaned forward. "What would that take?" "Bait. A property Kincaid wants badly enough to move quickly. And someone willing to risk everything to get the evidence we need." Abigail met Elijah's eyes. "My ranch is already at risk. What is one more gamble?" They spent 2 days planning. Margaret would approach the land office clerk, pretending to want help filing a false dispute on Abigail's property. She would offer him money, enough to make him talk. Elijah would be nearby, hidden, ready to intervene if things went wrong. Abigail hated being left behind, but she understood the strategy. If the plan failed, someone needed to survive to tell the story. The day arrived cold and gray, autumn giving way to the harsh promise of winter. Abigail paced the ranch house, unable to focus on any task, her mind with Elijah and Margaret in town. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. When she finally heard hoofbeats approaching, her heart leaped. But it was not Elijah. Elias Kincaid rode up to the house alone, his expression smug. "Miss Sterling, I thought we might have a final conversation." Abigail stepped onto the porch, the rifle just inside the door. "I have nothing to say to you." "That is unfortunate, because I have much to say to you." He dismounted, moving with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. "Your friend Chambers walked into a trap this morning. He and that meddling Donovan woman are currently being held by the sheriff for disturbing the peace." Abigail's blood went cold. "You are lying." "Am I? Why not ride into town and check?" "Oh, but that would leave your ranch undefended. And my men are waiting for exactly that." "What do you want?" "The same thing I have wanted from the beginning. Your signature on a deed transfer. Sign over the property, and I will ensure Chambers is released unharmed." "And if I refuse?" "Then he will be charged with assault. The clerk he attacked will testify. Chambers will go to prison, probably for years. And you will lose this ranch anyway when I buy it from the bank after foreclosure." Abigail felt rage and fear warring inside her. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, but Kincaid had outmaneuvered them. He held all the power. "I need time to think." "You have until sundown. After that, the offer expires." Kincaid remounted, his smile victorious. "Make the smart choice, Miss Sterling. This land is not worth dying for." He rode away, leaving Abigail alone with an impossible decision. She could sign away everything she had fought for, everything Elijah had helped her build. Or she could refuse and watch the man she loved go to prison for a crime he did not commit. There had to be another way. Abigail went inside, her mind racing. The deed lay on the table where she had left it, proof of ownership that suddenly felt like a chain around her neck. She picked it up, studying the careful script, her uncle's signature beside her own. Samuel had built this place from nothing. He had given her a chance at a better tomorrow. And now she was supposed to just hand it over to a corrupt man who used fear and manipulation to steal what others had earned? No, there had to be something she was missing. She thought about everything Margaret had told them, about the land office clerk, about the pattern of fraud. If Kincaid was this confident, it meant he believed his trap was perfect. But perfect traps had flaws. They had to. Abigail grabbed her coat and headed for the barn. She needed to think, and she thought better when she was moving. As she stepped outside, she noticed something odd. Kincaid's horse had left deep prints in the soft earth near the porch. But there were other tracks too. Older ones, from a different horse. Someone had been here recently, watching the house. She followed the tracks to the tree line, her pulse quickening. There, hidden in the shadows, she found evidence of a camp. Discarded food tins, cigarette butts, a spot where someone had tied a horse for hours at a time. Kincaid had been having her watched, which meant he knew more about their plans than he should. Unless Margaret had been compromised too, or unless this was not about Margaret at all. Abigail's breath caught. What if the whole thing was a setup from the start? What if Kincaid had known they would try to gather evidence and had prepared for it? She ran back to the house, grabbed paper and pencil, and began writing everything down. The timeline of events, the threats, the attacks, the promises Kincaid had made. If something happened to her, there would be a record. But a record would not save Elijah. Only action would do that. The answer came to her as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It was risky, possibly foolish, but it was the only play she had left. Abigail changed into her best dress, the deep burgundy one she had worn the day she arrived. She braided her hair carefully, pinned it up. She needed to look like someone who had been beaten, who was ready to surrender. Then she saddled one of the horses and rode toward town. The streets of Bristow were quiet as she arrived, the sun painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. Abigail tied her horse outside the sheriff's office and walked inside, her heart pounding, but her expression calm. Sheriff Callahan looked up in surprise. "Miss Sterling, I was not expecting you. I want to see Elijah Chambers." "That is not possible. He is being held on serious charges." "I know. That is why I am here to confess." Callahan's eyes narrowed. "Confess to what?" "To hiring Mr. Chambers to threaten the land office clerk. I was desperate to keep my property, and I made a terrible mistake. If anyone should be charged, it is me. Miss Sterling, I do not think. Please, let me see him. Let me apologize for dragging him into my problems." Callahan studied her for a long moment, then sighed. 5 minutes. That is all." He led her to the cells in the back of the office. Elijah was there, his face bruised, but his eyes sharp. When he saw her, something like panic crossed his features. "Abby, what are you doing here?" "I came to fix this. You need to leave. Now. Kincaid is... I know what Kincaid is doing. And I have a plan." She lowered her voice, aware of Callahan standing nearby. "Trust me. Please." Elijah's jaw tightened, but he nodded slightly. Abigail turned to Callahan. "Sheriff, I am prepared to sign a statement taking full responsibility for Mr. Chambers' actions. But I need something in return." "What?" "I want Elias Kincaid here. Now. I will sign over my property to him, but I want it done officially, with witnesses." Callahan looked confused. "Why would you want that?" "Because I am tired of fighting. I just want this to end." She let her voice break slightly, let fear and exhaustion show. "Please, send for him." Callahan hesitated, then nodded. "I will send someone." While they waited, Abigail positioned herself carefully, making sure she could see both the door and Elijah. She caught his eye and mouthed 2 words: "Trust me." Kincaid arrived 20 minutes later, his expression triumphant. "Miss Sterling, I am pleased to see you have come to your senses. I want this done properly, witnessed and legal." "Of course." He pulled papers from his coat. "I took the liberty of preparing the transfer documents. All you need to do is sign." Abigail took the papers, studying them. As she expected, they were fraudulent. The property description was wrong, the boundaries inflated to include land that was not part of her deed. This was not a simple purchase. It was theft dressed up as a transaction. "Before I sign, I want to understand something," she said clearly, making sure everyone in the room could hear. "These documents show boundaries that are different from my original deed. Why is that?" Kincaid's smile did not waver. "Just minor corrections. The original survey was imprecise. Minor corrections that add 50 acres? That seems significant. Miss Sterling, if you are having second thoughts, I am having first thoughts, real thoughts." She turned to Sheriff Callahan. "Sheriff, I want you to compare these documents to my original deed, right now." Callahan frowned, but took the papers. As he studied them, his expression shifted from confusion to anger. "These do not match. Not even close." "Of course they do not match," Abigail said, her voice steady now. "Because Mr. Kincaid is not trying to buy my property. He is trying to steal it. He has been using fraudulent documents to create false claims all over the county. That is why he wants me to sign so badly. Because if he can get my signature on these papers, he can claim I agreed to the terms, even though they are completely different from what was actually mine." Kincaid's face darkened. "That is a serious accusation. One you cannot prove." "Can I not?" Abigail pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "This is a list of every property you have acquired in the last 3 years. I got it from the land office this afternoon, before I came here. 12 properties, all showing similar discrepancies, all showing boundaries that do not match the original deeds." "Where did you get that?" Kincaid's composure was cracking. "From a clerk, who was very helpful once I explained I was considering selling. He thought I would want to see examples of other successful transactions. He had no idea he was giving me evidence of systematic fraud." Callahan was studying the list now, his expression grim. "Miss Sterling, these are serious charges. I know. That is why I wanted witnesses. That is why I wanted everything on record." She looked at Kincaid. "You made a mistake. You thought I was just a frightened woman who would sign anything to make the trouble stop. But my uncle did not leave me this ranch because I was weak. He left it to me because he knew I would fight for it." Kincaid lunged toward her, rage replacing calculation. Elijah shouted from the cell, but Callahan was faster. He grabbed Kincaid's arm, restraining him. "You are under arrest," Callahan said, "for fraud, attempted theft, and conspiracy." "You have no authority," Kincaid snarled. "I own half this county." "Not anymore, you do not." Callahan locked him in the cell next to Elijah's. "Miss Sterling, I owe you an apology. I should have investigated these claims earlier. You can start by releasing Mr. Chambers. He was trying to help me gather evidence, not commit assault. What about the clerk he supposedly attacked? I am guessing if you ask him now, with Kincaid arrested, he will admit there was no attack. He will probably admit a lot of things, if it means avoiding charges himself." Callahan released Elijah, who immediately moved to Abigail's side. His hand found hers, gripping tight. "You took a terrible risk," he said quietly. "So did you. We are even." Outside the sheriff's office, as the last light faded from the sky, they stood together in the street. Abigail felt exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her, but also something else. Victory. Relief. The beginning of real safety. "How did you know the clerk would give you that list?" Elijah asked. "I did not. But I knew men like Kincaid keep records. They are proud of what they build, even when it is built on lies. I gambled that someone at the land office would have evidence, and I was right. You could have been killed. So could you. But we were not. We won." Elijah pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. She felt the steady beat of his heart, the solid warmth of him, and let herself finally believe they were safe. "I love you," he said into her hair. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks. But I need you to know, whatever happens next, I love you." Abigail looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope and fear mixed together. "I love you too. I think I started falling the night you showed up on my porch. You gave me something to fight for besides just survival." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring weeks of fear and longing into that contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "What now?" Elijah asked. "Now we go home. We rebuild what was damaged. We make the ranch work." She smiled. Together, they rode back to the ranch under starlight, the prairie vast and quiet around them. The house looked small and fragile in the darkness, but Abigail no longer saw it as a burden. She saw it as possibility, as the foundation for something real and lasting. The weeks that followed were busy ones. With Kincaid arrested and his schemes exposed, the land office began the work of correcting fraudulent claims. Several families who had been forced to sell were able to reclaim their properties. Margaret Donovan became something of a local hero, her role in bringing Kincaid down earning her respect throughout the county. For Abigail and Elijah, the days fell into a new rhythm. They worked side by side, preparing the ranch for winter. Fences were completed, the barn reinforced, supplies stockpiled. Elijah proved to be as skilled at planning as he was at building, his military training translating into efficient organization of their resources. But it was the quiet moments Abigail treasured most. Morning coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over prairie that now felt like home. Evening meals at the table, their conversations ranging from practical matters to dreams for the future. Nights when they sat by the fire, close enough to touch, talking until the stars wheeled overhead. The physical attraction between them grew stronger, but they moved carefully, both aware that what they were building deserved to be honored. Elijah never pushed, never assumed. He waited for her to set the pace, to decide when she was ready for more. One evening in late November, as the first real cold settled over the territory, Abigail made her decision. They had finished supper and were sitting by the fire, Elijah reading aloud from a book of poetry he had found among her uncle's things. His voice was deep and steady, the words washing over her in a way that made her feel safe and cherished. When he finished the poem, she took the book from his hands and set it aside. "Elijah." He looked at her, his blue eyes questioning. "I want you to stay. Not in the barn. Not in the main room watching over me. Here. With me. As my husband." His breath caught. "Abby, are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything. You are the best man I have ever known. You make me brave when I am scared. You make me believe in tomorrow when today feels impossible. I want to build a life with you. A real life, not just partners on a ranch, but partners in everything." Elijah pulled her close, his hands framing her face. "I will spend every day of my life earning that trust. I promise you, I will never take it for granted. I know. That is why I love you." He kissed her, slow and deep, and she felt the careful restraint begin to slip. She pulled him closer, her fingers threading through his hair, and heard the low sound he made in response. "We should get married first," he said roughly, his forehead pressed to hers. "Do this right. We can ride into town tomorrow, find the preacher. But tonight, I just want to be with you. No more waiting, no more fear. just us. His eyes searched hers, making sure. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he stood and lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom. "I love you," he whispered. "More than I thought I could love anyone." "Show me," she replied. And he did. Morning came softly, pale winter light filtering through the curtains. Abigail woke wrapped in Elijah's arms, his chest warm beneath her cheek. She had never felt so completely at peace, so absolutely right. He stirred, pulling her closer. "Good morning." "Good morning." She tilted her head to look at him. "No regrets?" "Only that I waited so long." He kissed her forehead. "We are riding into town today, finding that preacher, making this official. What if he cannot do it today? Then we wait. But I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours. No ambiguity, no question." They dressed and prepared for the ride to Bristow, both moving with a quiet happiness that needed no words. The ranch looked beautiful in the morning light, the repairs they had made transforming it from a struggling homestead into something that felt permanent. In town, they found Reverend Matthews at the church. He was an older man with kind eyes who agreed to perform the ceremony that very afternoon. Margaret Donovan served as witness, along with Mr. Garrett from the general store. The ceremony was simple, just a handful of words spoken in the small church. But when Elijah slipped a band of silver onto Abigail's finger and promised to love and honor her for the rest of his life, she felt something fundamental shift. This was not just a marriage of convenience or necessity. This was a choice, freely made, to bind their futures together. "I pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Matthews said with a smile. "You may kiss your bride." Elijah did, thoroughly, to the laughter of their small audience. They celebrated with a simple meal at the hotel, Margaret regaling them with stories of her own struggles homesteading decades earlier. The afternoon passed in easy conversation and laughter, the weight of the last months finally lifting. As the sun began to set, they rode back to the ranch as husband and wife. The house was theirs now, truly theirs, the future stretching ahead with all its uncertainty and promise. That evening, they sat on the porch as they had done so many times before. But everything had changed. The touches were easier, more natural. The kisses came without hesitation. They were no longer two people fighting to survive. They were partners, building something that would last. "What do you want our life to look like?" Abigail asked, her head resting on his shoulder. 5 years from now? 10 years from now? Elijah was quiet for a moment, his arm tightening around her. "I want this ranch to thrive. I want to build more than your uncle ever dreamed of. But mostly, I want to wake up every morning with you beside me. I want to watch you plant your garden in the spring and harvest it in the fall. I want to sit on this porch when we are old and gray, watching our grandchildren play in the yard." Grandchildren implies children first, one step at a time. But she could hear the smile in his voice. "What do you want?" "I want to matter. Not just survive, but really live. Build something that lasts. Raise children who are strong and kind. And I want to do all of it with you." She looked up at him. "I never thought I would have this. A partner who sees me as an equal. A home that feels like mine. A future that looks like hope instead of just more struggle. You deserve all of it. And I am going to spend every day making sure you have it." They sat in comfortable silence, as darkness settled over the prairie. Inside the house, the fire burned warm and steady. Around them, the ranch they had fought so hard to keep stretched into the night. This was what tomorrow looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and earned and worth every sacrifice they had made to get here. Abigail thought of her Uncle Samuel, of the legacy he had left her. He had given her more than land. He had given her a chance at a better tomorrow. And she had found it, not just in the property itself, but in the man beside her, in the life they were building together. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For showing up that first night. For staying. For believing I could do this. You did not need me to believe. You had the strength all along. I just helped you see it." She kissed him, soft and lingering. We helped each other. That is what love is. The days that followed settled into a peaceful rhythm. Winter came in earnest, blanketing the prairie in snow, but the ranch was ready. They had stockpiled supplies, reinforced buildings, prepared for the cold months ahead. The work continued, but it felt different now. They were not just surviving, they were building. Elijah talked about expanding the herd in spring, about adding another room to the house. Abigail planned her garden, dreaming of vegetables and herbs and flowers to make the place feel more like home. On Christmas morning, they woke to fresh snow and brilliant sunshine. Abigail had made a simple breakfast, and they ate together by the fire, trading small gifts they had secretly prepared. She had sewn him a new shirt from fabric she had carefully hoarded. He had carved her a beautiful wooden box for her sewing supplies, inlaid with pieces of different colored wood in an intricate pattern. "It is beautiful," she said, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "When did you have time to make this?" "Late at night, when you were asleep. I wanted to give you something that would last." He pulled her into his lap, his arms around her waist. "I want to give you a lifetime of things that last. You already have. You gave me this." She gestured to the room, the ranch, their life together. "You gave me tomorrow." They spent the day in quiet celebration, just the two of them. It was enough. More than enough. As winter gave way to early spring, the ranch began to show signs of real prosperity. Elijah's careful management and Abigail's determination had transformed the struggling homestead into something viable. They had paid off the small debts her uncle had left, even managed to save a little. Margaret Donovan visited regularly, bringing news from town and advice on ranching. She had become something like family the grandmother Abigail had never had. Her stories of surviving on the frontier for 40 years gave Abigail confidence that she and Elijah could do the same. One evening in March, as the first green shoots began to appear in the prairie grass, Elijah came in from checking the herd with news. One of the cows calved early, healthy heifer. That makes 4 calves this season. 4, Abigail repeated, smiling. "We are really doing this." "We are." He pulled her close, his hand settling on her waist. "And there is something else." "What?" "I have been talking to some of the other ranchers. There is an opportunity to buy livestock from a herd coming up from Texas. Good stock, fair prices. But it would take most of our savings." Abigail thought about it. A year ago, she would have been terrified of such a risk. But she had learned that building something real meant taking calculated chances. What does your instinct tell you? That it is a good investment, that we are stable enough to take the risk. But it is our money, our future. I will not make the decision without you. Then let us do it. Let us invest in our tomorrow." He grinned, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "We are going to make this ranch everything your uncle dreamed of, and more." As he set her down, Abigail felt a wave of dizziness. She steadied herself against the table, trying to shake it off. "Are you all right?" Elijah asked, concern immediate. "Fine. Just stood up too fast." But over the next few days, the dizzy spells continued, along with morning nausea and a fatigue that no amount of rest seemed to cure. Abigail tried to ignore it, to push through, but Elijah noticed. "You need to see a doctor," he said firmly. "We cannot afford the Norder Spostri, Lensigs was sight, then the Wista red. The months means twice the windowers are not her handset. There was place where lost whiles white, and the tout than tired. Cone that dranding attend to shout that way. Brolet how-minded then, all the crying the placador spose. I do not care what it costs. Something is wrong, and we are getting you help." But Abigail was beginning to suspect nothing was wrong at all. She counted back weeks, did the arithmetic, and felt a flutter of something between fear and joy. When Dr. Harrison examined her in Bristow, he confirmed what she had already guessed. "You are with child, Mrs. Chambers. About 2 months along, I would estimate. Congratulations." Abigail rode home in a daze, trying to process the news. A baby. She was going to be a mother. They were going to be parents. Elijah was repairing the corral fence when she arrived. He looked up, saw her face, and immediately dropped his tools. What did the doctor say? She could not find words, so she just smiled, letting her joy show. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Abby? Are you? We are having a baby." He let out a whoop of pure happiness, sweeping her into his arms and kissing her thoroughly. When he finally set her down, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "A baby. We are having a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy? I am terrified and thrilled and more grateful than I can say. A family. We are going to be a family." The months that followed were a blur of preparation and anticipation. Elijah built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving small stars into the headboard. Abigail sewed tiny clothes, marveling at how small they were. Margaret brought blankets and advice, telling stories of raising her own children on the frontier. The ranch continued to prosper. The cattle from Texas arrived, healthy and strong. The garden Abigail planted flourished despite her initial doubts. By midsummer, they were producing enough vegetables to trade in town for other supplies. As Abigail's belly grew round with their child, Elijah became increasingly protective. He took over the heavier chores, insisted she rest more, worried constantly about her health. "I am pregnant, not broken," she told him one evening, exasperated but touched by his concern. "I know, but I cannot help it. You are carrying our child. I want to keep you both safe. We are safe. We have a home. We have each other. We have everything we need." He pulled her close, one hand resting on the swell of her belly where their child grew. "I love you. Both of you." The baby was born on a crisp October evening, almost exactly 1 year after Abigail had first arrived in Oklahoma Territory. Margaret served as midwife, her experienced hands guiding Abigail through the long hours of labor. Elijah paced outside, helpless and terrified, until Margaret finally called him in. "Come meet your son," she said with a smile. Abigail lay exhausted, but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in one of Margaret's blankets. When Elijah approached, she pulled back the fabric to reveal a perfect, wrinkled face. "He is beautiful," Elijah whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "He has your eyes," Abigail said. "Look, blue already." Elijah carefully took the baby, cradling him with surprising gentleness for such a large man. "Hello, little one. I am your papa, and I promise you, I will spend my whole life making sure you know you are loved." The baby made a small sound, and Elijah's face transformed with wonder. "What should we name him?" Abigail asked. "Samuel," Elijah said immediately. "After your uncle, the man who gave us this chance." Tears filled Abigail's eyes. "Samuel Chambers. It is perfect." The weeks following Samuel's birth were challenging, but filled with a joy Abigail had never imagined. Late-night feedings, endless diaper changes, the exhaustion of caring for a newborn. But every time she looked at her son, every time she saw Elijah holding him with such tenderness, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built. Winter came again, but this time they faced it as a family. The ranch was secure, the herd healthy, their savings growing slowly but steadily. They had weathered every challenge and come out stronger. One evening, with baby Samuel sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Abigail and Elijah sat by the fire, as they had done countless times before. "Do you remember the first night you came here?" Abigail asked. "When I opened the door, and you offered to help? I remember thinking you looked terrified but determined, like you would fight even if you had no idea how." "I was terrified. Of everything. The ranch, the isolation, the claim jumpers. But mostly, I was terrified of failing." "You did not fail. You succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined. We succeeded. Together." She laced her fingers through his. "I keep thinking about that letter, the one that brought me here. My uncle gave me a chance at a better tomorrow, and I found it. Not just in the land, but in you, in our family, in this life we have built from nothing." Elijah kissed her softly. "I was running when I came here, running from my past, from my mistakes, from the man I thought I could never be. But you gave me a reason to stop. You gave me a home. We gave each other a home." They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, their son breathing softly in sleep. Outside, the Oklahoma prairie stretched dark and vast under winter stars. But inside, there was warmth and light and love. This was the tomorrow they had chased. This was the future they had fought so hard to claim. And it was worth every struggle, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, because they had found something rare and precious on this frontier. They had found each other, and they had built a life that would endure, a love that would last, a legacy to pass on to their children and their children's children. The Diamond S Ranch was no longer just a property inherited by chance. It was home. It was family. It was everything that mattered. Abigail looked at her husband, at their son, at the home they had made together. "I used to think a better tomorrow meant escaping my past. But now I understand. A better tomorrow is not about running from what was. It is about building what can be. And what we have built is worth everything, Elijah said, his voice rough with emotion. This ranch, our family, this life, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. Baby Samuel stirred in Abigail's arms, making small sounds in his sleep. She smiled, touching his tiny, perfect fingers. He will grow up here. He will know this land, this life. He will understand what it means to fight for something worth keeping. And he will know he is loved. Every single day of his life. They sat together as the fire burned low, neither wanting to break the peace of the moment. The ranch house creaked and settled around them, familiar sounds that spoke of safety and permanence. Outside, snow fell softly over the prairie, blanketing everything in white. Margaret had told them once that surviving on the frontier required more than just strength or skill. It required hope. The belief that tomorrow could be better than today, that struggle could lead to something worth having. Looking at her family, at the home they had built from nothing, Abigail understood what her uncle had known when he left her this land. He had not just given her property, he had given her possibility. The chance to become more than she had been, to build more than she had imagined. And she had done exactly that. "What are you thinking?" Elijah asked softly. "That I am exactly where I am supposed to be. That everything that happened, all the fear and fighting and struggle, led me here. To you, to our son, to this life. No regrets? Not a single one." He kissed her forehead, then leaned down to press a gentle kiss to Samuel's downy head. "Then we succeeded. We chased a better tomorrow, and we found it. We found it together," Abigail whispered, "and we will keep building it, for ourselves, for Samuel, for all the tomorrows to come." The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In his cradle, Samuel slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that he was safe and loved. Outside, the Oklahoma prairie stretched vast and beautiful under winter stars, the Diamond S Ranch standing strong against the cold. This was home. This was family. This was the future they had fought so desperately to claim. And it was perfect. Elijah stood, carefully lifting Abigail and the baby together, carrying them toward the bedroom. "Time for rest. Tomorrow, we start building again. Tomorrow, and every day after." Abigail agreed, her head resting against his shoulder. They settled into bed together, Samuel between them, the three of them forming a small circle of warmth and love. Through the window, stars wheeled overhead, and the prairie sang its ancient song of wind and space and endless possibility. Abigail closed her eyes, feeling Elijah's steady breathing beside her, feeling Samuel's tiny heartbeat against her chest. She had come to Oklahoma territory with nothing but a deed and desperate hope. She had found danger and hardship and struggle. But she had also found love. Real, deep, lasting love. The kind that made everything else worthwhile. She thought of her Uncle Samuel, of the letter that had changed everything. He had written that the ranch was hers, that he hoped it would give her the life she deserved. He had given her so much more than land. He had given her the chance to discover who she could be, to find strength she did not know she had, to build something that would endure long after she was gone. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness, not sure if she was thanking her uncle, or God, or simply the universe that had brought her to this moment. Elijah's arm tightened around her. "I love you, Abby. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." I am chasing a better tomorrow with you, and that is the only future I will ever need. I love you too, more than words can say. They drifted toward sleep, safe in their home, surrounded by everything that mattered. The struggles were not over. There would be new challenges, hard seasons, difficult days. But they would face them together, as they had faced everything else. And whatever tomorrow brought, they would meet it with courage, with love, and with the unshakable certainty that they belonged to each other, and to this land they had fought so hard to keep. This was what happily ever after looked like. Not a fairy tale, but something better. Something real, and earned and built with their own hands, from the raw materials of hope and determination and love. The Diamond S Ranch stood strong through the night, a beacon of light in the vast darkness of the Oklahoma prairie. Inside, a family slept peacefully, their dreams filled with all the tomorrows still to come. And in the morning, they would wake together and begin building those tomorrows, one day at a time, one moment at a time, for the rest of their lives.